in your job there for 6 months or so when I saw you.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, like I said, I think I commented on that I was kind of being hard on myself on Instagram, but it's the truth that I there were some angles off and what have you, and so yeah, it was you could tell, at least my eyes could tell that I was very early on in training, right, despite not knowing when specifically the picture was taken.
Chris, that had to be me taking the picture. It wasn't you. I promise.
I don't I appreciate it.
So how long does it usually run? Like if you guys have to apply and then you're approved, how long are you usually holding the position of the sentinel?
I think I got up to being selected to join the platoon. The selection process was when I went through, it was about 3 weeks. In that selection process, the TDY as they call it, they taught us the basics of the rifle manual that you see the guards do outside, and then they teach us about the uniform. And the uniform is by far the most time consuming and most tedious and most perfection driven item, although we do everything down there to a standard of perfection, right? That it takes the most amount of time, it requires the most amount of your effort in order to complete any given day. And then they also teach you they give you the first 7 pages of what is ultimately 17 pages of knowledge that you'll need to be able to study and then be able to write on a blank sheet of printer paper verbatim. And every deficiency on that is considered what we call a gig. And for testing throughout the 5 tests after you're selected, the threshold for deficiencies or gigs becomes gradually smaller until your last test when you're allowed two. You're only allowed two. You're taught those things, and then 17 pages of knowledge about Arlington National Cemetery, the United States Army, and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. You'll learn all that, and then based on your performance throughout the selection process, and then in addition to an in-person interview with the platoon leadership and the okay from everyone involved, they'll select you based on that. And so you'll then begin training at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. So you'll be assigned to what we call a relief, which is a squad size element of people. You'll begin training to become a sentinel. You'll be assigned a trainer who is a fully qualified sentinel. And that on average, you'll have to take 5 tests. All of the areas that we talked about earlier are tested in every single one of those tests. So you'll be tested 5 times on each area. On average, that process takes anywhere from 9 months to a year to pass the training to become a fully qualified sentinel. And then after that, what ends up happening is guys will stay for an additional year as a sentinel and will train at least one replacement, maybe two, maybe three. I've seen people train as many as 5 replacements, right? So it really just depends on what your personal situation is as it relates to the Army. Some guys, in their time in service after they leave the tomb, other people leave and go to a different duty station. And so it all depends on where you are in your particular career or your personal career to determine what you'll do after the tomb. Yeah.
Are you awarded like a special ribbon or a pin ceremony or something for serving doing this?
Yes, when you pass all 5 of those tests, you are then awarded the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier Guard Identification Badge. And I believe to date there has been, I think, 680 some badge holders that have attained the badge since 1958 when it was created. So that's on average, that's about 8.5 a year. It's not a lot of people. It's the Army's least awarded badge. And so when that happens, you kind of become a member of a very, very tight-knit and small brotherhood of people, and they're all very friendly and are willing to help you in anything that you need moving forward. They're truly brothers for life. And so, yeah, you are awarded that, and then you take that with you for the rest of your career, and it's something you wear around.
Something to be proud of, yeah.
Hmm.
All right. Well, since you have that 17-page knowledge going on, can you tell me a little bit about the history of the old guard and I don't know, like teach me something because I really only know what I've seen on TV and that's it.
Sure. So, what I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit because, I will preface this by saying that we as guards, our ethos is more or less to take the attention away from us, which it so often becomes about us, and direct that attention towards the unknowns. And so, what I'll do is I'll tell you just briefly about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and how that came about and how we as guards got our start there. So, just to start off with, from 1917 to 1918, obviously the United States is involved in World War One. And following that, Congress says to the Department of Defense, you need to choose an unknown soldier from the First World War, and you need to inter them here in Arlington National Cemetery. And so in 1921, that selection process takes place in Chalon-sur-Marne, France. And the man who makes the selection is a man by the name of Sergeant Edward F. Younger, who's actually buried in Arlington National Cemetery. This took place in France. 4 unknown candidates were assembled from various military cemeteries in France, and they were all draped in an American flag so as to not be identifiable by any means. And Sergeant Younger circled those caskets 3 times, and he placed a spray of white roses on the 3rd casket from the left. And when he did that, that was him signifying that that was the soldier he had chosen to represent the First World War in Arlington National Cemetery. And so that soldier was then transported via the USS Olympia from Europe to the United States. The soldier rested in the Capitol Rotunda and then was brought across the river to Arlington National Cemetery, where he had his funeral in the Memorial Amphitheater, which is directly adjacent to and connected to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Immediately following that, on 11 November 1921, he was interred on the plaza at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And so the big rectangular structure that you see when you are at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, or you can even Google an image of it, that directly beneath that structure is the World War I unknown. And so when the World War I unknown was interred, that soldier was not, the tomb didn't look like that. The cap and the die weren't added until 1932. But backing up just a little bit, so in the years following the interment of the World War I unknown, there was some stuff that was going on in Arlington National Cemetery that wasn't entirely becoming of the respect that soldier was entitled to. And so Arlington National Cemetery hired a civilian guard to stand guard there during cemetery hours. And then after the cemetery closed at night, that guard would go home, so the tomb would remain unguarded through the night. And then in 1926, the military took over the right to guard the tomb. In 1937, the first 24-hour guard was posted. So on midnight to July 1937, the first 24-hour guard was posted, and that vigil has been maintained up until this very minute that we're talking. And so someone has always been out there guarding the unknown since then. That's kind of how the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and we as guards got our start down there. So that's a little bit of background for you.
It just gives me goosebumps. Thank you. That is amazing.
Absolutely.
That's something that everybody should know. Like, I feel like, why aren't we teaching that in school?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. But I'm happy to fill in everybody's place. So, yep.
Thank you. That's great.
Absolutely.
So, Kim, one day when you leave California, like if you ever decide to leave the state and leave home, you can actually maybe go to Washington and see it for yourself. She never leaves home, Chris. She goes to Hawaii, and that's about it. She doesn't go anywhere else.
Well, who could blame her? Yeah.
Huh? Hey, so you talked about a lot, and and you mentioned this earlier. There's a lot of stuff out there about being in the Guard and the barracks being there, but can you just, as much as you can say, walk us through a normal shift, like a normal day? What?
Sure, absolutely. Under normal circumstances, we're prepared to work a 26-hour shift. And so that involves me waking up to take the dog out at about 3:30 in the morning. I'll take him outside, and then I will get in my car after I've gotten all my stuff together, and I will get into work at about 4:30 in the morning. So we'll walk in, and we will begin setting up all of our uniform items in a very particular and organized fashion outside of our locker or wherever your designated area is, depending on your status and training. And then there are also racks. So the C-cap that you see us wearing outside, the belt, the gloves, all those things are kept on a rack up in what we call the ready room, which is the front area of the tomb quarters. From there, we'll pretty much do some things in order to hand off the quarters from one relief to another, and then the day will start. So depending on what time of year it is, we'll either post a guard every hour on the hour, or we will do it every half hour, and there will be someone up there to get posted pretty much every 15 minutes. Somebody's coming up to get ready to go. So yeah,
that either it's half hour or hour. Is that depending on temperature, or is that some of it, or no?
So it is dependent on temperature, yeah. So in the summertime, we do it every half hour. We do it based on temperature. In the wintertime, the cold is a little bit more tolerable than the heat would be in the summertime, right? Especially in DC. So it gets very, very muggy, very, very humid. And so in order to alleviate that risk, we kind of do 30-minute guard changes in the summertime from April to October.
Kim, seriously, you can Google this, or I have videos of it I can send you, but 21 steps, 21 paces. What do you call it?
21 steps north, or either way you're going. So when the guard gets posted, he'll move to the end of the mat with the other two guards, and then he will face DC for 21 seconds. He will then turn to the north end of the mat. He will do his rifle manual to switch shoulders, because we as guards always stand between the unknowns and the weapon, and that's to signify that we are the thing between the unknowns and danger. And then they will wait another 21 seconds, and then they will walk up the mat, do 21 steps up the mat, and then repeat the process at the north end of the mat, and that will go on and on until the next guard is posted. Yeah.
Has there ever been anything like a crime? Has there ever been someone approach you, or some issues or anything like that happen throughout all these years?
I've never had anything that was directed in malice, right? I've had several people, most of the time it's just kids being kids. And so when that happens, our job is just to tell them sternly, visitors will maintain an atmosphere of silence and respect. Almost always, I would say, down to maybe an occasion that usually there's no more noise or anything like that coming from them. In the event that there were to be something bad like that, we have law enforcement present at any given time, and we also have a whole team of people downstairs who can come out and assist me in dealing with them in a much less ceremonial manner, should the situation require it. So, yeah.
I like the way you put that, a less ceremonial manner.
Sure, yep.
So, Kim, I don't know if you've ever Googled this or not, but what he just told you, repeat what you said, Chris, about when somebody's being loud.
So when someone is, causing a disturbance, either wittingly or unwittingly, our job is to ensure that the unknowns that are buried at that monument are given the respect that they are entitled to. And so our job is to sternly tell them, visitors will maintain an atmosphere of silence and respect at all times, right? Depending on what your particular relief's rules of engagement are. And so from there...
No, go ahead. Sorry. I was just going to say, that happened with you while I was there.
Did that really? Yeah, I didn't know that. It's happened several times, so yeah.
It did while we were there, and I can tell you, I wasn't even talking, but after you said, and when you said sternly, Kim, I'm telling you, when they say it, everybody stops talking. I'm serious. You should Google it.
I will. Well, I just followed you on Instagram, Chris. So do you have anything like that on there?
Kim, I'll catch you on the back end, and I'll see if I can find something for you. But yeah, okay. Not off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. We'll see.
So prepping for this, so a couple of days ago, I Googled it, and there's a YouTube video about where there was a wreath laying ceremony, and there were two, looked like maybe ROTC students placing a wreath, and there was a lady wanted to get a little closer after they placed the wreath. So she comes down the side of the barrier, and then goes underneath the ropes, and then approaches the tomb. And I'm telling you, she immediately was sternly told to go back.
Sure. And like I said, that's a great example of I almost never attribute malice to those kinds of things, right? That's mainly just people being people, right? And we recognize that as guards, but we also have a job to do, and that is to protect the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And so that always comes first. And so that's the reason for the sternness, if you will. Yeah.
Any particular days that come to mind that maybe someone special visited, or someone famous, or something that kind of made an impact on you?
Yeah, actually. So I wouldn't say that I'll say this. So throughout my time there, a lot of celebrities, a lot of senior military officials from both, the U.S. military and from militaries abroad have come. Leaders and prime ministers of other countries have come. And those were all super enjoyable experiences for which I'll be forever grateful. But I think the thing that I will take with me for the rest of my life is probably a little bit more than a year ago. I was taking my final test to become a Sentinel. It was last April, and on either side. So Kenny, you were there in the winter time, so you didn't get to see it. But in the summertime, Arlington National Cemetery they are great, and they do a great job of, they plant beautiful, beautiful